All right, so I left you with a baby elephant and I came back with a baby elephant. Although this one I don't think is photoshopped. This one just looks like he was too tired to step all the way to get into the water and just kind of flopped in there. Is that the way you're feeling this morning? Hopefully not. Hopefully you are full of vim and vigor and ready to get started and see what we are studying in this chapter. All righty. We are on, we've been looking at immunity. How do we get so that we are no longer affected by bacteria and viruses that our body has fought before? And yesterday we talked about active immunity, where we either got a vaccine or we were exposed just in our life. I had a cold and I had a virus that was that cold and my body fought it away from it, and now I will never get that virus again. But that doesn't mean I won't get a cold again. It just won't be that virus that causes my cold. So we looked at active immunity, and today we're going to look at passive immunity. Passive immunity is getting antibodies passed on to you that you have never had to make yourself. I have antibodies in my body from a virus that caused a cold. My body made those antibodies. They put the little antigens on the ends of that Y-shaped antibody. And now anytime that bacteria shows its face in my body, the T cells, the B cells will blast it away and it'll be gone. Or maybe those natural born killers will go after it. I won't have it. I have an immunity against that. But there are times that immunities are passed on to us that we didn't make ourselves. One way is a newborn from a mom. For several months after a baby is born, the baby can tend to have the same immunities that its mother had. I wish I knew in front of me what the actual count is, but it's a couple months. It's a way God has designed us so that we have a fighting chance when babies are first born. Another way that that immunity can continue is if the mom nurses the baby, because through the immunities that are present in her breast milk, she will be passing those immunities on to the baby. Again, it's God's way of, and design of protecting newborns of all sorts of different organisms. And there's another way where antibodies are actually injected as a serum into somebody, and that those antibodies are already created and crafted, and that can tend to help what's going on. You saw the video, so I won't go on to it any more than that. But these are different ways that an immunity can come, and God designed an amazing way for us to keep our kids alive. But things do go wrong. And our bodies are part of a creation that has been marred by sin. Now, I know, oh, sin, yep, we're going to talk about sin again. Yeah, we are. Because it's not just the fact that man is now separated from God because of their sin. And without making Christ the master of their lives, they will always be separated from God. That's one thing with sin. But the other thing that happened because of man's sin is that the earth became cursed. And so there is a different way that the earth operates because of man's sin. Some people have suggested that we never would have been sick. We never would have died, obviously. We would never have had those types of things had we not sinned. Well, what causes those things? There's a verse in the New Testament that says the earth groans, waiting to be redeemed from this burden that it is carrying because of us. Well, one of the things that we do see, and one you can look into the Old Testament and you can see that the people who lived Adam's time have lived for hundreds of years, and now we average around 70 to 80 years old. Our bodies decay, our bodies get sick, our bodies get diseases, and it is all on account of the fall. Well, one of the things that can go wrong in our body is an autoimmune disease. An autoimmune disease is one where your own personal immune system joins the other side and starts fighting you. I gave you this example in a couple chapters before, that Christy, my daughter, who has diabetes, the reason that she has diabetes is that she was exposed to a rotavirus, and that rotavirus triggered some genes inside her body that turned her immune system against her in the area of her pancreas and destroyed her pancreas. Diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Allergies are autoimmune disease. There's something that happened in your body that now you're allergic to a flower. Now look at a flower. A flower is not that big, but it can kill you if you're allergic to it. Something has gone wrong in your body, and those are autoimmune diseases. Rheumatoid arthritis is another one, and I don't know if any of you guys have any type of arthritis at all. But these are ways that our body has actually stopped being on our side and has joined the other side. Another type of way that it can go wrong is if our immune system is not working properly. This is called immune deficiency. Your immune system isn't strong enough to fight what needs to be fought. It might be because you're elderly. If you notice, a lot of the people that have been correct, in fact, it's around 67% of all people who have caught the COVID-19 virus and have died from it have been people who have been over 60 years old. When you age, your body has worn out. Your immune system is not as strong as it used to be. It might be genetics that causes this to happen. It might be something that has been passed on through mutations from one generation to the other. It might be a medicine that you took. Maybe the medicine, maybe you had chemotherapy because you had cancer, and that chemotherapy destroyed your immune system. So now you're susceptible to anything that comes down to the pike. But it also could be lifestyle. You may be damaging your own immune system if you're obese, if you use drugs, if you are an alcoholic, if you ingest a lot of different things that you shouldn't be ingesting because they are not keeping you healthy. And I know when you're young and we talk about being healthy, you think, oh, well, that's just so I can run a mile or I can do, all sorts of things. A lot of times healthy means that you have a strong immune system to fight off bacteria and viruses. Several people have been on exclusive isolation with this COVID virus because they have compromised immune systems. They either have had cancer in the past, or they are susceptible genetically to pneumonia, or they have diabetes. In fact, somebody with diabetes is 4 times more likely to die if they get if they get the COVID virus than somebody who's not. All of these things add up into how healthy you are. And number 4, environmental pathogens. That's the one that I mentioned about Christy. She was exposed to a virus. But there are pathogens all around us, and they constantly are fighting onto our immune system, trying to destroy it. One of the immune deficiency diseases that you've heard of is HIV. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficient Virus. It is a virus that people can get. Well, how do you get it? You can get HIV, which is a disastrous disease. You can get it by sharing body fluids, by breast milk, that's another body fluid, by blood, by semen, by sharing injection sites. If you have HIV and you have a baby, the chances are very great that your baby will have HIV. It is a nasty virus that can be passed around. But notice that it doesn't say you can get HIV by, something that is not sharing bodily fluids. You can't get it by being in the same room as someone. You can't get it by shaking their hand. You can't get it by caring for people. It is when bodily fluids are shared. And this is one reason why when you see first responders go out, they put gloves on, they put masks on, they cover themselves because they are intent on helping others, but also keeping themselves safe. Um, HIV can cause acquired immune deficiency syndrome, also known as AIDS. Now, if you remember what I said about immune deficiency, it means your immune system is too weak to fight off the bacteria and the viruses that you come in contact with. That's one thing that this HIV virus can do. So, can you die of HIV or AIDS? Actually, no. What you do die of might be just a cold. But what HIV and AIDS have done is that they have destroyed your immune system, so that when just a common cold that maybe would give me the sniffles, it could kill you if you had AIDS or HIV. So it is a very, very dangerous virus. It's a very dangerous thing, and people are trying to be very careful in that aspect. But it's something you have to realize, that sharing of bodily fluids, blood, all of those things can have consequences. Another thing that happens when our body goes wrong is cancer. And we've talked about this several times, so I'm not going to go too much into depth. But if you remember, here's a picture from when we did the cell cycle. And if you remember mitosis, when the cells make copies of themselves, for the most of the life of the cell, they're in interphase. And during interphase, they are growing, they are getting the nutrition they need, they are building the things that that cell needs to build, they are doing the normal cell functions. And when they go through mitosis, they are making a copy of themselves. When you have cancer, you have uncontrolled mitosis. And if you remember from the chapter we studied this on, there are checkpoints throughout the cell cycle that a cancerous cell just blows past. It doesn't even stop at the checkpoints. Usually those checkpoints stop any cell that might be malfunctioning. Well, cancer's a little different in that it just blows right past, gets to mitosis, and then it stays there. And it spends all of its time making copies of itself. So gradually it builds a tumor, and as that tumor grows, it takes up all the nutrition and all the food that's coming down, the oxygen that's coming down to feed the regular cells. Because the cancer is getting bigger and bigger, it's using all those nutrients, it's using all that oxygen, and it's starving the cells around it, is crowding out the area that those cells need to be in, and so it's taking up the space that it needs as well. There's two different types of tumors, two different types of cancer. There's benign cancer, which means a tumor has formed in one place and then it's stayed there. And very often a benign tumor is something that surgeons can go in and they can take that tumor out. They may do some chemotherapy or something on the cells around that just to make sure they have all of it, but for the most part, it's done. But a malignant tumor, a tumor that's metastasized, that means instead of going through and making copies of itself and making copies of itself and making copies of itself and staying in that area, as it makes copies of itself, it sends those copies through the bloodstream to all the different parts of the body. And once it gets into all the other different parts of the body, it continues to make copies of itself and make copies of itself and make copies of itself. So now you have cancer not just growing in the one place, you have it growing in all of the areas of your body. And this is a very, very difficult type of cancer to survive from. So what causes cancer? Well, exposure to carcinogens. Carcinogen is just a fancy word that means cancer causing. So if you're exposed to pathogens or germs, viruses and bacteria that cause cancer, you can get cancer. If you're exposed to radiation, too much exposure to X-ray, different radiation that comes from so many different sources all over the world. If you're exposed to chemicals, whether there be chemicals that you ingest yourself in your food, or if they are chemicals that you're exposed to in the environment, chemicals in your food, chemicals in your water, chemicals in the air. Pollution is a huge source of chemicals. Those types of things are carcinogens. They cause cancer. But your lifestyle can also cause cancer. The type of food that you eat, whether or not you're eating nutritious food. Your genetics can cause cancer. There may be a family trait that comes down from gamete to offspring to gamete to offspring to gamete to offspring, where you are susceptible to breast cancer or testicular cancer or something that travels along in family lines. All of these things are things that can cause cancer. Some of them we can avoid. Some of them we can pass laws to try and get the pollution out of our air, the pollution out of our food, and so forth. But others is just living in a fallen world that's going to cause this, and there is nothing you could do to stop it. There's some ways to treat cancer. One of them is chemotherapy, which is injecting a certain amount of chemicals into your body that just totally wipes out the cancer cells, kills the cancer cells. And it is a type of chemical that kills all cells that do fast mitosis. Fast mitosis means that they're going to be cells that grow quickly. So you often see cancer patients with no hair. Why? Because hair follicles are fast growing, fast mitosis cells. So even though they are not cancerous, the chemotherapy can affect them and can destroy the hair follicles so the person goes bald. Another thing that you hear about with cancer patients is that they can't eat. Their stomach is so upset, and their stomach, it just is very, very hard to get nutrition in. Why is that? Well, the lining of your stomach replaces itself every 30 days. It is a fast mitosis cell. Chemotherapy destroys fast mitosis cells. And really with chemotherapy, the thought is, let's see if we can kill as many of the cancer cells as possible before we kill too many of the good cells. It's a kind of a last-ditch effort to try and beat this abnormality of our body. Now, especially with tumors that are benign, surgery may be the ability that you take to get rid of cancer. Again, a benign tumor has stayed where it started, and so it might be much easier to take out. If the cancer is metastasized, if it is malignant, then it has gone through all of the body, and there's just no way that you can take out enough to remove the cancer. There is another force that is with us. And this is a very exciting force. And I'm going to save most of this for some of the videos that you're going to watch today. And that is immune therapy. It's actually using cells from your own body to fight against cancer cells and creating antibodies within your body that actually target cancer cells. It is a phenomenal thing, and I can't wait for you to watch the video for it, because it is a bright lining in cancer research right now. It may be that it'll eventually get rid of chemotherapy, get rid of surgery, and cancer will be no more the horrible thing that it is for us. Another thing is eugenics, and we mentioned this a little bit, and your videos are going to mention it even more. And this is how you may have the exact same DNA as your twin, but because of your life experiences, your body will be utilizing that DNA far, far differently. Your genes will be expressed far, far differently than your identical twin, even though you have the same DNA. Now, maybe you don't have an identical twin, but this also relates to how your body takes care of the DNA that you have and what genes are expressed in you. You might follow the girl on the top of this picture who is kept with exercise, kept with nutritious food, taking care of her body, and she's able to do all sorts of stuff. She's able to lift weights, she's able to hang out with her kids, she's able to live, etc. Or you could follow the path of the bottom one, where there's food and cigarettes and all different types of stuff that has caused her now to no longer be able to function. Eugenics is the science of figuring out how to turn on and turn off genes. So there's a video you're going to watch on this that will make it much more explanatory. But what we do in our bodies actually does matter. It does actually change gene expression. And one of the neat things that we have discovered recently is the thing about telomeres. Telomeres are little ends on the ends of chromosome. And every time a cell goes through reproduction, or mitosis, if you will, the telomere shrinks in size. Every time that cell goes through mitosis, the telomere gets smaller. Every time the cell goes through mitosis, the telomere gets smaller, until eventually the telomere is no longer there. And the cell will either remain for the rest of its life as that one cell, and it won't make any more copies of itself, or that cell will die. Why is this a good thing? Because we're discovering how to get rid of the telomeres on cancer cells. If we can chop the telomeres down to nothing on cancer cells, either using medicine to do that, then the cancer cells will stop replicating. They'll stop mitosis, and we can cure it. There's so many things out there in genetics, in immunotherapy, in all of these different topics that we have come up across in the last several weeks that are just brimming with new discoveries. If any of this is ever something of interest to you, you're right on the cutting edge. It may be that your children will never know what cancer was. It may be that your children never will know that you know what a pandemic is. You know that. But I also know that we are in a fallen world. And much as we can look ahead with the science and the technology we have and how amazing this is getting, we will never fail to be living in a fallen world. When we get to heaven, none of this will be mattering. None of the illness, none of the disease, none of the fights that we have to stay healthy will be a problem. Doesn't mean we're going to sit on golden stairs and just hang out and stare at each other. There's going to be so much for us to do to heaven. But one of the things we won't have to do is be separated with death. All right, I have some work for you to do. I have some videos for you to watch. Let me see. So aside from the videos, I have a sheet for you that says Bacteria and Virus Review Worksheet. I'd like you to work on that tonight. Finish the whole thing. Tomorrow we're going to go over it. Tomorrow we're going to review. And then the following day we're going to test out of this chapter. So we've got another day yet to do some review on it. The other thing I wanted to tell you is in all the papers I gave you I guess 4 sheets of vocabulary words and their definitions right next to them. These things, if you were in the classroom, we would have cut them out and we would have been using them as in a game. I gave them to you anyway because they're really good for review. I know it's kind of probably on the thin paper, it wouldn't really last well to cut them all out, but you could. But it would be nice to do a matching game if you cut out the names and you cut out the definitions to see if you could match all of these. This chapter has a lot of vocabulary words. Hopefully you know most of them. Hopefully they're familiar with you. But you're going to have to work on them in order to sufficiently pass this chapter, just because of the volume of the vocabulary. So work on the bacteria and virus review sheet and start working on some of that vocabulary words so that you can be practicing and reading. And enjoy this picture. He's such a cute little thing. I love sea otters. All right, guys, have a great day.